Ron Howard's 6-decade career in Hollywood seems almost impossibly smooth. From child star to acclaimed director, he's maintained a reputation as one of the industry's genuinely kind professionals. But that famous warmth was forged in fire. Behind the successful films and Oscar wins lies a series of difficult working relationships that tested his patience and shaped his approach to filmmaking. Today, we're exploring 6 actors who challenged Howard in profound ways, teaching him lessons about ego, professionalism, and the price of artistic excellence. America knew Frances Bavier as the warm-hearted Aunt Bee on The Andy Griffith Show. For young Ronnie Howard, the reality was starkly different. Bavier was a classically trained stage actress who viewed television comedy as beneath her considerable talents. While Andy Griffith and Don Knotts created a playful atmosphere on set, Bavier maintained professional distance. She didn't engage in the casual banter that helps child actors feel comfortable. Howard has recalled that she seemed perpetually disappointed with the work, treating the production with what he describes as cool professionalism rather than warmth. This was Howard's first lesson in Hollywood's fundamental disconnect. The character isn't the person. The loving aunt on screen was an actress fulfilling a contract, nothing more. For a child expecting mentorship, this coldness was confusing and isolating. Bavier eventually retired to North Carolina, declining most reunion opportunities. Her unhappiness with being remembered primarily for a role she didn't value became legendary. Howard learned early that fame and fulfillment don't always align, and that some performers struggle deeply with their own success. This experience taught him that genuine on-screen chemistry often requires professional discipline rather than real affection, a lesson that would serve him throughout his directing career. At just 5 years old, Ron Howard encountered Yul Brynner on the set of The Journey. Where Bavier was cold, Brynner was intimidating. The actor, famous for his role as the King of Siam, carried that regal authority into every interaction. Brynner didn't adjust his intensity for the presence of children. He commanded the set with an absoluteness that made crew members scramble. For young Howard, accustomed to his father's gentle guidance, Brynner represented something alien, a performer who believed his talent granted him authority over everything and everyone. The atmosphere around Brynner was one of controlled tension. He expected perfection and made his displeasure known through silence and disapproval. It wasn't cruelty exactly, but rather an old-school belief that the star was the center around which everything else revolved. This experience showed Howard how a single ego could dominate an entire production. He witnessed seasoned professionals defer to Brynner's demands, saw how fear could replace collaboration. It was the opposite of everything Howard would later create as a director. Decades later, when Howard built his own sets, they became known for being relaxed and egalitarian. That choice was a direct response to what he'd witnessed with Brynner, proof that leadership could come through respect rather than intimidation. By 1982, Howard was directing Night Shift, his second feature film. He needed to prove himself capable of managing a major production. Enter Shelley, a brilliant comedic actress with a Second City background and an intensely analytical approach to her craft. While Michael Keaton improvised wildly and Henry Winkler brought natural warmth, Long wanted to dissect every moment. She questioned character motivations, requested additional takes, and approached comedy as if it were mathematical. This wasn't malicious, it was her process. But for a young director trying to maintain momentum, it became a daily challenge. Howard had grown up in television where efficiency was paramount. Long's methodical approach, while producing excellent work, threatened to bog down the schedule. She seemed genuinely unaware of how her perfectionism affected the ensemble's rhythm. This was Howard's introduction to managing different working styles. He realized that some actors use intellectual analysis as a form of control, and that a director must balance validating those concerns without letting them hijack the production. The friction taught him to set clearer boundaries. Being nice wasn't enough. He needed to be decisive. Long's performance in Night Shift is genuinely excellent, proving that sometimes the difficult path produces the best results. But Howard learned he needed to define the limits of that difficulty. Russell Crowe arrived on A Beautiful Mind with a reputation for intensity and a short fuse. Howard, the eternal peacemaker, suddenly faced a performer who believed great art required high-stakes conflict. Crowe didn't just play John Nash. He inhabited him completely and expected the entire production to accommodate that inhabitation. He asked relentless questions, challenged creative decisions, and brought a volatile energy that made the set feel heavy with significance. One famous clash occurred when Crowe insisted on shooting chronologically to properly portray Nash's mental deterioration. For Howard, this was logistically nightmarish, but after extended debate, he recognized that Crowe wasn't being difficult out of ego. He was fighting for authenticity. This marked a turning point in their relationship. Howard learned that with certain actors, you don't fight the fire, you channel it. The friction wasn't destructive, it was generative. Crowe pushed Howard to abandon the nice guy safety net and become a director who could match intensity with intellectual stamina. Managing Crowe required different skills than managing previous collaborators. It meant developing thicker skin, engaging in hours-long discussions, and accepting that some sets would be battlegrounds. But the results, both A Beautiful Mind and later Cinderella Man, justified the struggle. Howard and Crowe became friends and frequent collaborators. The lesson? Sometimes conflict isn't something to avoid. It's the fuel for excellence. Tom Sizemore represented a different kind of challenge entirely. By the time their paths crossed significantly, Sizemore was struggling with severe substance abuse. His presence on any production became unpredictable, not through ego or perfectionism, but through fundamental unreliability. For Howard, who views film sets as sacred collaborative spaces built on mutual respect, this was heartbreaking. Unlike a demanding star or a meticulous perfectionist, an actor battling addiction creates uncertainty. The question isn't whether the scene will be great, but whether the actor will appear at all. This situation tested Howard's compassion against his responsibility to the production. How do you protect hundreds of crew members and millions of dollars while watching someone self-destruct? Howard couldn't kindness someone out of a crisis. Sizemore's trajectory became a painful lesson in the limits of directorial support. Howard learned to prioritize reliability in casting, understanding that personal character matters as much as acting talent. He realized that protecting the collective effort sometimes means making difficult decisions about individuals. This wasn't friction born of creative differences. It was the collision between professional obligation and human tragedy. It showed Howard that the hardest challenges aren't the actors who fight you, but the ones who can't show up to fight at all. The most complicated dynamic wasn't with an adversary. It was with Howard's best friend. On happy days, Howard was the lead. But within seasons, Henry Winkler's Fonzie became a cultural phenomenon that eclipsed everything else. Howard has admitted this hurt. Network executives began treating him differently, even floating the idea of renaming the show. He wasn't jealous of Winkler's success. They genuinely loved each other. But the professional disrespect stung deeply. This friction was structural rather than personal, but that made it no less painful. Howard realized he could remain in television being treated as secondary, or he could pursue directing where he'd control his own destiny. Their friendship survived because Howard possessed remarkable emotional intelligence. He could feel hurt while still celebrating Winkler's success. That ability to hold both truths simultaneously might be his greatest achievement. Winkler didn't just give Richie Cunningham a friend. He gave Ron Howard the final push to stop playing characters and start building an empire. Ron Howard's journey through Hollywood exposed him to every difficult personality type the industry produces. But he didn't let these challenges embitter him. Instead, he transformed them into wisdom. He learned that difficult people aren't usually villains. They're insecure, struggling, or simply wired differently. He discovered that you can maintain kindness while establishing boundaries, that you can survive friction without losing your integrity. Today, Howard stands as proof that you don't have to become hard to survive in a hard business. You just have to be smart about which battles matter and which lessons to carry forward. Thanks for watching.